Hello, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and welcome to another Monuments Monday. It's a little rainy today, so I'm wearing my American Battlefield Trust rain jacket. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the monuments, markers, and tablets inside the town of Gettysburg. And this will be a multi-part series. In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about my methodology. What should we count as a monument, marker, and tablet, and what should we not count? And of course, how do we even begin to count? Most people don't even know where the town begins and where the battlefield begins. So I want to talk a little bit about the boundaries of the borough of Gettysburg and the boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park, and how that's going to affect our count of the number of monuments, markers, and tablets in the borough. So I've decided that we're not going to count monuments that are on property owned by the Gettysburg National Military Park, even if those monuments are technically in the borough. Or at least not most of them I won't count. So what does this mean? Starting at the eastern edge of the borough of Gettysburg, where it adjoins Strabane Township at Rock Creek, we have the headquarters marker to General Richard S. Ewell along the Hanover Road, and that will be in my count. And then the boundary of the borough cuts across the historic Culp Farm. I should mention that the borough limits have changed over the years, but this is nothing new. The Culp house was part of the borough at the time of the battle, and the Culps are listed in the 1860 census as being residents of the borough of Gettysburg. But the Culp Farm marker and the Culp Hospital marker are part of the Gettysburg National Military Park, even though they're in the borough. So we're not going to count them as part of the borough. Also, I think I'll throw up here a map of the borough with the changing boundaries over the years that was created by Ben Dixon years ago for the Adams County Historical Society. Also, I should point out that we do have a website, Adams County GIS, that you can get on. You can actually see where the taxable properties in the borough are and the borough limits. So East Confederate Avenue is, of course, part of the Gettysburg National Military Park, but part of that road is in the borough, and the borough line cuts across the rear of the Gettysburg area middle school over here. One interesting fact about the boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park, it has changed over the years. For instance, at one time, the park extended all the way out here to the edge of the town of Gettysburg. And in the 1940s, there was a land exchange between the Gettysburg Area School District and the Gettysburg National Military Park. And the park got some land over there towards the base of East Cemetery Hill, and the school district got the land all the way out here to the edge of the town. But here along East Legion Alley and Roth Alley, you can still see the remnants of the original pipe rail fencing from the Gettysburg National Military Park Commission. East Cemetery Hill is largely in the borough of Gettysburg, but we're not going to count East Cemetery Hill, the Gettysburg National Military Park monuments. The National Cemetery is also in the borough of Gettysburg. Believe me, I'm not pretending to be an expert on where the boundaries of the town are or the boundaries of the park, and I'm not even knowledgeable about the relationship between the borough and the park when it comes to these areas in the town. I'm just trying to point out that there's some complications involved when you're counting the monuments, markers, and tablets in the borough. So we're not going to count the monuments in the Soldiers National Cemetery. Now, Evergreen Cemetery, however, is also partly in the borough, and it's partly in Cumberland Township. And we are going to count the monument for a section of Taft's Battery, which is in the cemetery. But the other two sections of Taft's Battery in the cemetery are actually in Cumberland Township. And of course, we're going to count the statue to Elizabeth Thorne. And of course, we're in the borough limits here along the Tonytown Road next to the National Cemetery. But the 73rd Ohio Monument is on park property. The monument for Orlando Smith's Brigade is also on the park property. Actually, the Gettysburg National Military Park owns this little stoned-in enclosure around the brigade plaque, which I think is kind of fascinating. We will count, however, the marker for the town of Gettysburg that you can see along the Tonytown Road here. And we're not going to count the 55th Ohio Monument down here at the intersection either, but you know, perhaps we should have put that in our count, because you know, that monument that today is inside the annex of the Soldiers National Cemetery was actually on private property for many years. There was a house on the corner, the Singley House, and the Gettysburg Battlefield Preservation Association purchased it in the 1980s, late 1980s, and tore it down. And so eventually transferred that over to the Gettysburg National Military Park. And we're not going to count the 8th Ohio Infantry Monument, but again, that's inside the borough, and we're right at the corner of the borough. The borough line actually kind of cuts across Long Lane and then goes up across to Seminary Ridge and then goes onto the other side of West Confederate Avenue and cuts along West Confederate Avenue to the Lutheran Seminary. But we're not going to count all the monuments, markers, and tablets on Seminary Ridge, again, because that's part of the Gettysburg National Military Park. One interesting fact is that the section of West Confederate Avenue that runs through the Lutheran Theological Seminary was actually built by the Gettysburg National Military Park Commission in the 1890s. And of course today it's been renamed Seminary Ridge Avenue, but the old Adams County Historical Society used to be at 111 West Confederate Avenue. And we have some photographs of the construction of this road. But again, the Gettysburg National Military Park has a jurisdiction of this road, and we are not going to count the monuments and markers along this road to the Confederate artillery positions. The statue to Martin Luther is not on park property, and it is part of the seminary campus, so that kind of thing will be in our count. Of course, Lee's headquarters, the former Larson's Quality Inn property, is in the borough. But it is not part of the Gettysburg National Military Park. As a matter of fact, it's not even in the boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park. That's a whole nother subject. The boundary of the Gettysburg National Military Park versus the land owned by the Gettysburg National Military Park. That's for another video. Don't get me started on the 1988 boundary study. But from here, the borough limits include the land of Gettysburg College across the north of town and all the way back around to Rock Creek, where we started our video from. Some of you might be aware that the Adams County Historical Society is located just north of the Gettysburg Borough and Cumberland Township. You know, the relationship between the Gettysburg National Military Park that we've talked about and its various neighbors is very complicated. And I don't pretend to understand it or even claim to have knowledge of it, but that is not my point here. My point is just to try to determine who has jurisdiction over the various monuments, markers, and tablets that we're pointing out here in our video. And sometimes that's very difficult to ascertain. I'll tell you this. I have decided in this study to count the monuments that are on ground owned by the National Park Service, which is landlocked in the borough. And by that, I'm referring to the monuments along Coster Avenue. And finally, before we get on with the actual count of monuments, markers, and tablets, I think I should tell you a few things that we are not going to count as monuments, markers, and tablets. For one, I'm not going to count the individual stones in the various cemeteries within the borough as monuments. And you know, we have in the borough, we have Evergreen Cemetery, St. Francis Catholic Cemetery, Lincoln Cemetery, and here the Gettysburg Methodist Church Cemetery. But I may count some of the commemorative markers in the various cemeteries that honor different groups of people. And while we're at the Methodist Church Cemetery, let me show you this. Here is the grave of Edward McPherson Woods. He was 3 years old when he died on July 5th, 1863. And apparently he was hiding in his basement during the battle with his family on Chambersburg Street. And after the fighting, they opened up the door, the kids ran out into the backyard, and his brother picked up a rifle and shot and killed 3-year-old Edward McPherson Woods. Okay, so it is kind of going to be tough to decide exactly what to put in my count and what not to. But I've decided that we are not going to put in Civil War building plaques. There are some 200 of those in the borough. And I don't think we are going to count wayside exhibits in our count. To me, they're more like informational tablets, although some of them did have dedication ceremonies in the town. And we are definitely not going to count individual pavement bricks in the square of Gettysburg and in Alumni Park. You might not believe this, there are somewhere around 7,500 of them. So sorry, Gary, we're not pointing yours out as part of our count. So how many markers, monuments, and tablets are in the borough of Gettysburg? I'm not sure yet, and it'll depend on how many we count. But in our series, I'm going to number them as we go along. And in your comments, you may argue with me or disagree with what I count and I don't count, and for the various monuments, markers, and tablets in the borough. So again, if you like this video and you want to continue to see the videos about our monuments, markers, and tablets in town, please like and subscribe to the channel.